we had the boss man, Mr. Rooney. Update to his rule, a modification to it, the Rooney Rule we're referring to. If you want, you can go ahead and, let us know what that's all about. The new amendment to said rule.
Okay. This is on ESPN. All 32 NFL teams will hire a minority offensive assistant coach for the 2022 season, part of a series of policy enhancements announced Monday to address the league's ongoing diversity efforts. The coach can be a female or a member of an ethnic or racial minority, according to the policy adopted by NFL owners during their annual meeting, and will be paid from a league-wide fund. A coach must work closely with the head coach and the offensive staff with the goal of increasing minority participation in the pool of offensive coaches that eventually produces the most sought-after candidates for head coaching positions.
So essentially, to sum it up, man, the reason why they're in, man, great reading voice, by the way, dude.
That wasn't bad.
Bro, you sound like one of them narrators. Like, if I ever do an ebook, I think I'm going to get you to read my ebook, all right? I'm going to get you to do it because, like, the way you talk, man, it was just dope. And you get all proper, too. You sit up like, yeah, and when you're talking about this and that, and then we got the Rooney Rule and that. I'm like, dang, Deke. I'm looking over like, man, who are you? Who is this guy?
I don't know.
You look, like I said, you look like a scholar, man. Or maybe you're like Indiana Jones, like a younger version. You know what I mean? I like it, though. I like the look on you, baby. But the big reason with this, amendment is because with the recent hirings, obviously we still are having a lack of representation from minorities in terms of head coaching and executive roles. And initially what people were saying was, hey, you don't have enough qualified coaches. So then these minorities coaches became more qualified. Then it was, well, you don't have enough offensive experience. That's been the new sort of thing that they're going with. And this is just another way to kind of address that, to give those minority coaches an ability to not just be on offensive staffs, because we've seen running back coaches, receiver coaches, O-line coaches that are minorities, but they're not quarterback coaches. They're not coordinators. And that seems to be the new reasoning behind the lack of representation for minority candidates getting these opportunities. So this puts those guys in a place exclusively where they're going to be more hands-on in some of those type of operations. Like you talked about, man, with game planning, when you talk about personnel, when you talk about skill positions, that is significant. And like I said, it's unfortunate that it has to be this case, because we know the initial reaction is, oh man, they always hire the best player available. I mean, they always hire the best person available, but we've seen that is not always the case. And there's been multiple instances that you can point to for whatever reason. And, that's just one of the things that we're still trying to figure out, how to make this thing better. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Until it does become more balanced, until you do have more diversity, more representation for minorities at that level, they're going to continue to have to do these type of amendments. I mean, we've seen them even where they incentivize, draft capital based on minority hires and minorities elevating to head coaching or executive ranks. I think the Chiefs, they're benefiting from that. They'll be receiving a 3rd round pick this year behind that. It's just the reality of it. I mean, it sucks, but hopefully this breeds a little bit more better results. That's kind of my opinion on it. What about you, man?
Right. My initial thought whenever I first saw it happening was like, yeah, it sucks that we got to make rules for this. And it even goes back to whenever we were talking about adding draft picks for some of these teams hiring, whether it was minority GM candidates or also head coaching candidates. Or it's even offensive and defensive coordinators, too.
Absolutely,
some of these teams are getting draft picks for. It's like, it's kind of messed up, because it's just like, bro, it shouldn't come to this, because we should just be hiring the best person available, as you mentioned earlier. But at the same time, at least they're trying stuff. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the credit you can give. But then I thought a little more. I'm like, what coaching staff doesn't have a minority on like their offensive staff right now? But whenever you just laid it out right there,
this is
like, do we need to hire someone right now? Like,
no, so this is going to be for every team, because they're essentially creating a new position.
Because we have a couple minorities on the offensive coaching staff.
Right, but this is a specific position where that person is going to not just work with wide receivers, not just with quarterbacks. They're going to work with all those skill positions, along with being a part of the game planning, because that was another element, right? Oh, you're a wide receiver coach, but you're not a coordinator. Oh, you're a quarterback coach, but you don't play call. You don't call the plays, because that was the whole argument with Eric Bieniemy. Remember, it was like, oh, we think the offense is great, and we think he's a good coach, but Andy Reid does the game day calling. But it's like, well, you hire this guy and he didn't do any game day calling and it was fine with that, even though we've seen this guy fail before. Those are some of the reasons why they created this new position. So yes, every team is going to actually have to hire a new person just for this position right here, because the offensive assistant is going to also be a part of working with the GM and some of the personnel decisions as well. So think of them more so as like a floater versus a hard, this is your group only. So they're doing it so that way that candidate can get all the experience that they need in all the different areas where when it's hiring time, when teams have went away from qualified candidates by saying, well, hey, this guy doesn't know how to do this, or this guy has never done that. You're kind of removing that excuse out the way now. And like I said, I mean, we laugh at it because it's kind of embarrassing when you think like we got to put these type of rules in place, but it is a step in the right direction. And I'm just glad that they're continuing to do these type of things until...
Yeah, if it's not working, then you can just try something else.
Right, but until we get, the representation that they want, this is what needs to happen. You have to continue to tweak it. I mean, first you think about just the interview element, right? Initially, when the Rooney Rule first came out, it was to get minorities interviewed, but then they weren't getting enough interviews, or it was the sham interviews that we've heard about. Then it was, okay, you got to, interview a certain amount of them. And then it was, okay, well, now we can tweak it to this and we can tweak it to that. So they're doing various things. And I do like that part, but I don't think it's something that needs to just go away, because until we get it where it's, more diverse, this is going to continue to pop up. And when you continue to see coaches that get hired that we don't feel are qualified in any way, shape, or form, or guys that don't have a track record of being successful but still getting the opportunity to stay in place, where you're seeing qualified minority coaches not get that same leniency, not get those same opportunities, or teams not taking those same chances on some of these guys that might have been special teams coaches as well, because that was a guy that was a special teams coordinator, part-time receivers coach that got a head coaching job a year or two ago. Talking about Joe Judge, absolutely. We saw how that turned out, but I digress. Where you got an Eric Bieniemy, and it was like, well, what's going on with that? But either way,
maybe he could have helped out.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But this is just another way to kind of help with that, to kind of, get the ball rolling in the right direction a little bit more. So shout out to Mr. Rooney, because this is the rule that's named after the Rooney family. Obviously, we know that. And yeah, man, we'll just see what goes on from there, man, in terms of some more improvement with it.
Who do you think it's for? Fresh guys, maybe coming off of retirement recently in the NFL, people that are just trying to get into coaching at the beginning, or is it for someone that's already in here and like they view it as almost like an upgrade? Like say a receivers coach on another team. Both.
No, okay. Ike Hilliard is a prime example. Ike Hilliard, think about him, right? He's been our receivers coach. He was trying to interview for offensive coordinator spot. Didn't get it. So this could be a situation where he says, let me get that spot.
Okay.
So that way I get game planning. I get work with quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends. I also get work with the GM in terms of personnel decisions, so I can understand how everything works. So now when I go to interview again for one of these executive positions, one of these offensive coordinator or potentially head coaching positions, now I have these qualifications as well. So I look at it as this, it helps those type of guys, but also if you're a younger guy just coming into the league as a coach and you're like, man, I need to learn these type of things. Well, you can also be in that role and learn there as well. I think if it's me running it, I would much rather keep my younger coaching staff as position coaches and let them learn that first to get your foundation on which you specialize in or what area I'm trying to get you to specialize in. And then once you have a baseline of, okay, we know you can coach this position, now let's upgrade you to this offensive assistant. So now you can really see the overarching framework of how, the NFL works. But I wouldn't want to teach a person that, because I think that's more like doctorate level stuff. You know what I mean? Because you're learning the ins and outs, both on the field and personnel stuff. Whereas if you don't know your basics of being a position coach, I think you're going to struggle doing that side of it. And that's when you think of like most head coaches, they've started out as position coach. Then it was, run coordinator or running game coordinator or pass game coordinator or like secondary coach. And then it was like, okay, and then it became DC or OC, and then they get those opportunities, because you got to get, like, it's a lot that goes into being a head coach. It's a lot that goes into being a GM. And those positions are so impactful in terms of on field and off the field that you don't want to just put a guy that doesn't even have a foundation yet in that level, at least from my perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it could work out. I mean, it could be something good. Probably a downgrade for offensive coordinators, though. Right? Yeah. You don't want to go from that to the offensive. I don't know, though.
But if you're going to get some GM stuff, that's a game changer, because when you start talking about personnel decisions or at least being involved in those conversations, that's different. And I also think as offensive coordinator, if you're Eric Bieniemy, for example, you might feel like you're involved in the game planning, but maybe he's not to that extent. Maybe it is mainly Andy Reid who does the game planning along with calling on game day. So if that's the case, Eric Bieniemy could say, well, you know what? Let me get that spot as well, or let me get that spot because now it makes me have to be involved. It makes them have to include my opinions, and I can have a say so. Whereas depending on how it was prior to that, when we've heard with Coach Tomlin and Keith Butler, right? The story with that of, you know, it's always been Coach T. Well, maybe for Keith Butler. Now, granted, it's only for offense, not for defense, because we know the offense players or offensive coaches are who typically are getting these head coaching spots. That's why they really made the rule for offense, you know, because of that element right there. But those are some of the things that when I think of it, I'm like, okay, I get why they're trying to do it, and I get that part of it, but I do think it could be a benefit for, you know, guys that are already established coaching that just haven't been able to move up. Because Eric Bieniemy, we've already known he's very qualified. He's very established. What more of a track record do you want from a coach like that? But how many cycles have we seen now where he's been passed over? And he's made it very clear that he wants to be a head coach. It's not as if he's over here like, oh, no, I don't want a head coaching job. I love being under Andy Reid. No. He's been very clear and vocal about that. So that's why for me, it's like, all right, I could look at this and say, you know what? Maybe this does benefit him. Maybe that is the part that gets him over the hump. And even if they fail, at least
get
give
people
them a
talking.
chance.
You know, the media would start talking about that. And then
no, they definitely would, man.
All of a sudden, you're back in kind of like the coaching, hiring cycle.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, you're getting some publicity, and then maybe that could almost fast track you a little bit, just to get the buzz going again.
No,
because
absolutely,
I feel like
man.
his buzz as a head coach went down.
Yeah,
for some reason, I don't know what it was,
and it's solely because it's been multiple years now he's been passed over.
Right.
And the new argument was, oh, he doesn't interview well. It was like, what? Like I don't care about any of that. Like, what are we talking about here? Because when I hear some of these head coaches speak, I mean, you listen to Urban Meyer talk at times,
I don't know how the Eagles dude interviewed well.
I'm like,
granted, he made the playoffs, man. Like I gotta give him credit that they
know.
did a lot better than what I thought they were gonna do this year.
Dude, I think.
But in terms of interviewing well, come on, man.
Or I think even when Dan Morgan first took over in Detroit and some of his, I'm like, bro, what are we listening to? He the dude knee off. You're like, bro, what? Like,
up in Detroit.
Yeah, like that's what gets you hired. That's what they want to hear. Or like you said, Urban Meyer. Like, think about Urban Meyer right now. It's like, bro, the stories that are coming out about him in terms of his time in Jackson, I'm like, I get he was the name, but we saying that was more qualified than this guy? Or let me hear the Joe Judge. I want to hear how he interviewed. If he's having guys run and do all these crazy things, I'm like, bro, what how does this work? I just, So I'm hoping that this is one of those things that will at least get that ball rolling. And like I said, if these guys fail, who cares? I'm not saying that they're going to be great because we know how hard it is to coach in the NFL. We know how hard it is to play in the NFL. But it's a difference when they're not getting opportunity. And I think that's the big reason why these type of things are happening right now.
Yeah. Hopefully step in the right direction.
Hopefully so, man. Hopefully so.